welcome to SignLanguage101.com, lesson number 2. Now we've finished the first lesson and we're moving right along. My name is Dr. Byron Bridges, and in this lesson we'll be covering some important aspects of sign language, starting with our ABCs, some colors, pronouns, numbers 11 through 20. We have some language tips, a quiz, and some deaf culture. Don't worry, we have vocabulary too. But before we get into that, let me pose a question. Something that people ask me quite often. And they'll say, "Can deaf people drive a car?" Well, what do you think? Well, that's a good question. Can deaf people drive a car? Well, the answer is yes. Sure they can. And the reason is because you don't need your ears to drive, right? You need your eyes. And since the invention of the automobile, deaf people have been driving for many, many years. And in fact, I would say deaf people are very good drivers because they rely on their eyesight. So to answer the question, can deaf people drive? Yes, they can. All right. Are we ready to get started? Are you ready? Me too. I'm ready. Let's go. And now, let's learn our ABCs. I'll show you how to do it. So remember to pay attention to the hand shape and the movement. Be very careful with that. So I'll show you the sign, and the letter will appear right below it. So let's get started. A. Notice the hand shape? A. B. B. C. There you go, it looks just like how you write it. C. D. D. E. Now be careful, it's not E. Remember, your fingers have to touch your thumb. E. F. It's the same as the number 9, but be careful, it's F. G. G. H. H. I. And the only thing that's missing is a little dot. I. Sure enough, J. It looks just like how you write it. J. K. It's a little bit harder. K. The thumb is in between your fingers. K. L. Again, it looks just like how you write it. L. M. Notice your thumb is under the 3 fingers. So the thumb is hidden. It's hiding in there. N. And you can see the thumb just barely sticking out there. N. O. O. Again, it looks just like how you write it. P. And remember, it looks just like K except it's upside down. P. Q. Q also looks like G, except it's upside down. Q. R. The 2 fingers are hugging each other. R. S. S. T. And the thumb is under just the 1 finger now. T. U. It's the two fingers there, right next to each other. V. It looks just like how you write it. V. And now we add another one, W. It looks just like how you write it. W. X. Looks like a hook. That's a little different. X. Y. Y. And the last one, Z. I'll show you again. Z. There you go. Now you know your ABCs, and it is important. So if you need to fingerspell your name, maybe give your address, or you're at a restaurant and you need to spell something. Maybe you don't know the sign for something. You can always spell it. So keep practicing. Red. Blue. Yellow. White. Black. Green. Orange. Pink. Purple. Tan. Brown. Gray. All right, it's time for some numbers. 11. 12. 13. 14. 15. 16. 17. 18. 19. And 20. All right. Keep at it. And now, language tips. Just letting you know. It's important as you're learning sign language and your ABCs that you follow the right hand shapes and stay in that position. A, B, C, D, E, F, and so on. Keep practicing holding your hand in that direction. Don't move them going back and forth. It's very important for your hand to stay in the same position. It's the same with numbers. If you do 1 and flip it around 2 and flip it around 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, back and forth, that doesn't work. It doesn't look good. So stay in the same order and keep your hand in the same shape. It will help you become better as you continue to improve. Just letting you know. Now, let's get into some pronouns. When using pronouns, we use the index finger for he, she, and it. We use the palm when describing his and hers. So you point at the woman. That means she. You point at the man. That means he. You point at the object. That means it. So it's important to remember, use your index finger when describing who you're talking about. She, using your index finger. He, using your index finger. So that's how you know. You, me, they, we, my, your, ours, myself, yourself, themselves, ourselves, someone, each other. And now it's time for some deaf culture. Well, what does deaf culture mean? Here we are on opposite sides of the tracks, and we're trying to understand each other. You're hearing, and I'm deaf. So I'll explain what it is in this box and open it out and give you little tidbits. So first of all, we'll talk about deafness. And do deaf people associate themselves as being handicapped? Is there something wrong with deaf people? Is that how they look at themselves? Do they label themselves as handicapped? Well, to let you know, most deaf people feel that, hey, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not handicapped. I'm not in isolation, or I don't feel like I can't be involved. I think deaf people feel normal. We have a culture just like you do. Of course, your culture's focused around spoken language, mine's with the sign language. So let's compare cultures. Let's look at a couple of different examples. Let me ask, do we share the same language? Well, no. You speak English or French or Spanish, whatever it is. I use sign language. I use American Sign Language. Also, do we use the same word order? In fact, no, we don't. Let's talk about art. Of course, we have artists all over the world, but do deaf people have artists? Sure we do, but we might have different themes, different inspirations. I would say deaf artists are certainly more visual. They use topics such as oppression, or maybe they talk about how they feel around hearing people. There's many different topics that artists express themselves. And it's our world, the deaf world. Food. Do we share the same food? Well, yes, of course. We both live in America, right? We're Americans. So our food isn't different. Music. Oh, sure. Hearing people have all sorts of great, wonderful musicians and music to listen to. Do deaf people have music? Oh, sure they do. We have music. We have our own beats, stories, heritage. Of course, hearing people have stories that have been passed down through generations, and that's the case with deaf people as well. We have our own stories. Maybe ABC stories, poetry, whatever it is. A lot of it is passed down through generations. So deaf people certainly have pride, and they feel that it's my culture. It's a deaf culture. So I wouldn't say deaf people associate themselves as being handicapped, but then again, you might meet some deaf people who don't have a strong deaf culture influence.
Maybe because they were raised without knowing sign language. Maybe they didn't have anybody to teach them about the culture, or they felt really on the fence between a hearing culture and a deaf culture. But I would say for the most part, people who've signed through their whole life, maybe they went to a deaf school or they have deaf parents, and they've used sign language and they're around other deaf people, they feel certainly proud of their language and of their culture, and they feel they can join the hearing world through the use of technology and internet. And it's easy to join the hearing world, but the only way for a hearing person to join our deaf culture is by our language. So I say respect that, and I certainly appreciate it, and you're welcome to join our culture. I just ask that you respect the culture and appreciate it for what it is. You shouldn't feel sorry for deaf people. Oh, certainly not. We're fine, believe me. I wouldn't say we're handicapped, no. Okay, we can't hear. That's all right. We still live our lives, and we do a good job of it. We don't struggle and with our everyday lives. We're okay. Deaf people adapt very well, especially with communication. So it's important to not look down on deaf people. Look at us as equals. There might be some difficulty in signing with the deaf person, but deaf people are very good at figuring out what you want through the use of other communications. But I would say, remember, we're not handicapped. We're just deaf. I just can't hear. So is it really that important? Is it that big of a deal? No, it's not that important. Just letting you know. Wow. We've covered a lot, and I know you're learning a great deal. Your ABCs, colors, numbers, pronouns as well, deaf culture and language tips, and a quiz. Whew. You might feel a little bit overwhelmed, but don't worry. Keep at it. Keep practicing. It's going to take some work on your part. You will advance and progress. There's a lot of information, but don't worry. Keep at it. And I'm going to hold on to the information. We're going to move right along to lesson 3. And I'll see you there. But until then, keep practicing your ABCs. Keep working on those numbers. And don't forget the pronouns. Keep at it. Obviously, we need colors too. So I'll see you where? Lesson number 3.